Years of community organizing and movement experience, began in high school, working on poverty, climate change, and LGBTQI plus campaigns. She credits growing up in a low-income immigrant household with her early political awakening. She believes another world is possible. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I pass over the mic to you. And we will do Q&As at the end of our presentation, but if you want to put something in the chat so you don't forget as we move along, as she's talking, please feel free to do so and know that we'll go back and make sure we capture that. So I'll turn over to Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elisa. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for being here this evening to learn a bit more about the countywide ballot measure that we're calling the Bold New Way to House LA. And shorthand is Measure A. It's officially not Measure A yet, but once it's officially on the ballot and written all that, it'll be Measure A. So anywho, let me share my screen, and I have a presentation to share with you all to learn a bit more about this ballot measure and what we can do to help support. So to start out, yes, I'm with United Way, and I'm also part of Everyone In, which is it's a community effort to build public political will to end homelessness and our housing crisis by fighting for solutions that work. And the goal is to activate as many people as possible across the county. So yes, Bold New Way. So I'm really proud and excited to share about this ballot measure with you all. This is something where we collected over 400,000 signatures across the county, and we're just so proud of all of the work that's been done to go behind it. And yeah, I'll start ahead. So essentially what this ballot measure will do is address the things that worked from the previous ballot initiative, which was Measure H, and then move forward and add on to some of the things that were gaps that were not included in that previous ballot measure. And so if there's anything that you walk away remembering about this ballot measure, it's these three things: that it'll help create more housing we can afford, it'll provide more mental health care, and provide more accountability as well. And I'd say that the biggest component of this is the huge focus on homelessness prevention, which is just as important. And yeah, so what are things that we've learned from the previous initiative and work that's been done? So we've learned that, yeah, 42 people per day end their homelessness. And with that, in the last 5 years, over 100,000 people across the county ended their homelessness. And that's around the same amount of people that fit in the Rose Bowl or the SoFi Stadium. So it's quite a bit of people. And at the same time, we're still not investing enough in preventing homelessness. There's a statistic that LASA shared, and it's the LA Homelessness Agency. And what was I going to say? Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. So LASA shared this statistic where 100 people find housing and leave their homelessness per day, but 120 people fall into homelessness each day. So it's a constant uphill battle. And additionally, we have almost 7,000 empty long-term mental health beds in the county. And that's due to just lack of funding, a lack of funding for service providers that are unable to operate because there's no funding for it. And it's such a shame that there's so many beds where people can be provided with housing and or services as well. And another thing that we've learned is that we are over 500,000 units short of affordable housing. And so it's clearly a very dire situation where we need to build more at lower costs as well. And yeah, so with the situation, the current climate that we're in right now, because of the previous ballot initiative only existing for 10 years, it's due to sunset in 2027. And so if nothing is changed, 30,000 people that have received housing and or services will lose that, will lose the housing and or services that they've been provided. And experts say that there would be a 25% increase in homelessness as well as a result, which is, yes, it's not great. So it's a very urgent and dire situation that we're in, which should come to no surprise, I'd imagine, to everyone that's on this call. So what is this measure going to actually do? So quite a few things. And oh, another thing that I meant to also say is that another really exciting thing about this ballot measure is that it's actually citizen-led. So this was put together, I can't remember who, but someone had mentioned the importance of hearing from folks with lived experience. And I just want to echo how important that is. This was put together over the course of years from community members, from homeless service providers, from people with lived experience, people currently that are unhoused, from experts. And it was not created by politicians. So we really believe that the people closest to the problem are the best architects to the solutions to those problems. And so we think this is a very bold new way to address the housing and homelessness crisis that we're currently in. So these are the things that this measure will provide. So as I mentioned before, it'll be expanding mental health treatment. And with that, it's connecting folks that are currently unhoused with effective treatment for folks that currently have mental illness. Because as of right now, as it turns out, because of our lack of this mental health treatment, the LA County Jail is the largest mental health provider, I believe, in the county or in the state, which is really unsettling as well. So this would also be a way to kind of remove part of that carceral state that we have and the policing of people with mental illness. Another thing is that it would help make housing more affordable. So a really great thing, in addition to providing more funding to build affordable housing, it would also be converting existing housing into affordable housing as well. So it either current affordable housing whose covenants are set to end soon, it would be extending those, or for naturally occurring affordable housing as well, this would purchase those units in a sense of making it affordable in perpetuity, which I think is really great. So it would expand our units, not just from building, but to also already existing units, which also helps because building can take time. Another key part is, I'd say the biggest key part of this is preventing homelessness. The really important part of stopping homelessness before it starts. So a huge component of this is providing things like emergency rental assistance, because you're not able to really live a healthy, dignified life if you're losing your housing. It makes everything much more difficult. And imagine if you had the ability to not have to worry about that if there were things like emergency rental assistance. Additionally, yes, like I mentioned before, it'd be preserving life-saving services that currently exist. As I mentioned, there's 30,000 folks that are receiving services and or housing. And it would also be mandating that the money goes to projects and solutions that are effective. And ways of doing that is by actually holding the programs and respective parties accountable. So there are legal mandates that would need to be met. And if there were programs that were not being effective, that were not meeting those goals, then funding would be then reallocated to programs and projects that actually are being effective, which I think is really key because, you know, this is this is our investment as a county, and we want to make sure that our funds that we work so hard for are being used in the most effective way possible to help our unhoused neighbors. And oh, yes, I forgot. One last thing that's really great about this as well, that shouldn't be overlooked, is that it's also going to be helping support workers. So in addition to union workers that would be building the affordable housing, which would be creating well-paying jobs, it's actually also going to be really key to funding and supporting our providers that are working on the ground, and being able to provide actual decent living wages. I mean, there are cases, I'm sure some of you might know some folks, but there are some providers that have to live in their car because they can't afford housing. And, you know, the irony in that, right? And so this would be very key as well to supporting with funding. So how is this going to end up working? Well, I'll share right now. So as I mentioned, there are specific mandates that need to be met, certain specific goals that need to be legally met. And each goal is going to have specific metrics. And as I mentioned before, funding will be reallocated to actual programs that are being effective, that are working. And all of these goals are going to be overseen by a citizen oversight framework. So it's also just, you know, regular everyday people, our community members that are going to be overseeing this as well. And these are those 5 required outcomes, and they're legally required. And this is written into the measure. So it would be to increase the number of people permanently leaving homelessness, increasing the number of people moving from encampments into permanent housing, increasing the number of affordable housing units in LA County in general. And then with these two, the reducing outcomes, I think, are very, very important as well. It'd be reducing the number of people with mental illness and or substance use disorder that are experiencing homelessness, and also reducing the number of people that are falling into homelessness, period. So really stopping that inflow of homelessness is extremely key. There's someone who works for the county, trying to remember her position, but was quoted saying that if we stopped the inflow of homelessness today, that homelessness would end in LA County in 3 years, which is a beautiful thing to imagine, that, you know, life doesn't have to be this way, that, like I mentioned, or like I said in my bio, another world is possible. And so this is how the funding would be allocated, and it's based off of an estimate of an annual revenue of $1.2 billion. So you can see here, a huge chunk would be going to homeless services and mental health. So that would be going to a lot of providers that would be providing services. And there's 15% of that, which would go towards, it's the local solution fund. And it's a way to encourage all 88 cities in the county to get involved. And with that, the campaign, or sorry, the committee would also be meeting with cities to help them create homelessness prevention programs as well, which I think is a really important and key thing, because it'll take all of us all across the county. And then you can see here, you know, another 26% is going to go towards building affordable housing and purchasing already existing affordable housing, extending covenants. And then there's this amount with homelessness prevention, emergency renter assistance, and then 3% going towards accountability, innovation, and data. So thinking of even more ways to build faster and cheaper as well. So as far as that amount that I shared, as far as the estimated annual revenue, that would be done through a 1/4 cent sales tax increase. And so I just wanted to share that this, the decision to do this, first, the initial idea was to do a parcel tax. That was what we really wanted to do, but it pulled very badly. And so this was the only other way to make these changes possible. And the way that this amount was decided on was done in a very sensitive way, because, you know, part of the organizations that we work with really work with a lot of people that have had lived experience, that are, you know, low income, that are struggling financially. And so trying to think of a way that would have the smallest and least amount of impact possible was how this amount was raised. And to address those very valid concerns, this 1/4% sales tax increase won't apply to everyday things like groceries, gas, medication, EBT purchases, rent, diapers, menstrual products. And the likelihood of who's going to be paying most of this was actually going to most likely be tourists and like businesses. So it's not even really going to impact everyday folks that like live here as much. So you can see there's an estimate of what the annual household, what the cost would be for a low income person. And sorry, for per month, the estimate is that it would be around $2.50 per month for a low income household. And for a more average income, the impact would be an extra $5 a month. And to really highlight this, if you were to purchase a $100 pair of shoes, you would only be paying an additional 25 cents. Oh, sorry. So really, it's a very minimal impact on something that's going to be of huge benefit to people all across the county. And another really important thing about this that I really appreciate is how this measure ties together housing justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. Again, it really should come as no surprise to folks here that low-income communities of color suffer much more exposure to pollution as a result of racist redlining, which of course put cloistered communities together in certain neighborhoods and has helped create the conditions that we have today. And in addition to that, urban sprawl in general leads to the loss of natural habitats, increased greenhouse emissions, air quality and water quality is worse. And an important thing to remember is that La Casa, which would be funded by this measure, which is the Los Angeles County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency, La Casa is offering opportunities to finance housing along transit corridors as well. So that's really key. And also another core objective for La Casa, who is going to be receiving funds from this, is confronting existing housing segregation and addressing the lack of affordable housing and high resource communities. So this is something that I think is very important component of this. And so there might be some questions that are popping up for some folks here. These are some common questions that I have some answers to. So, excuse me. So how is this different from the previous homelessness sales tax that I mentioned prior, the Measure H? So while there have been many incredible things that were in this previous initiative, there's still some gaps and things that we've learned needed to be addressed. So this is essentially like a repeal and replace. And I'd say the biggest difference is the prevention component. The homelessness prevention component is a huge part, huge part of this, which is a huge difference. Another thing as well is that while Measure H is going to sunset and end in 2027, this would actually be in perpetuity. So LA County will always have this fund every year to be able to help all of our neighbors across the county, whether housed or unhoused. And also the legal mandates, the legally required outcomes is another difference as well as having the citizen oversight committee that would be overseeing the work that's being done. So I'd say those would be probably the biggest differences with this. And then, yeah, a question of taxes are so high already. Won't this hurt low income people? So as I shared previously, based off of the research that an economic analyst did, based off of spending habits of different income levels, that's how he was able to discover that the impact on a low income person would be $2.50 per month. And for average income would be around $5 per month. And I'd say that while there technically would be an impact, although albeit small, the benefits would grossly outweigh any impact that's on folks. Because if there's someone that's, for example, low on rent, unable to pay rent, this would be providing emergency rental assistance, emergency rental services. If that extra $2.50 wasn't paid per month, they maybe wouldn't even have access to that, and then have the concern and the risk of falling into homelessness. So this would instead be helping like stabilize folks instead, to be able to then save money and be able to thrive and not just have to survive. Yeah, another question, how come we haven't made more progress? So again, as I'd say, there actually has been quite a bit of progress, and I really want to like applaud and thank the people that helped put together the previous ballot initiative. I mean, you know, again, over 100,000 people have gotten back into housing. That's quite a remarkable amount of people. There are currently, again, 30,000 residents that are receiving services and or housing that's funded. But again, without the prevention component, people are going to continue to fall into homelessness. When you connect that with wages that aren't rising, but you have a higher rising housing costs, it's just bound, it's inevitable. So by having a focus on homelessness prevention, we're going to be able to see much more progress. And then another question, why do we need this after we just passed Measure ULA? So Measure ULA is just for the city of Los Angeles. There's 88 cities in total in the county. And so that's a big difference, a lot more space that would be covered. And additionally, Measure ULA, it doesn't have funding for mental health care and or substance use treatment. And so that's it's a very big difference there. And also the county is about to lose hundreds of millions of dollars for homeless services. I believe $350 million, which again, as I mentioned earlier, experts say will increase homelessness by 25%. So this is going to be replacing the critical funds and make sure that they're again spent more effectively, or spent on effective programs. And yeah, how much housing will this create? A lot. So this would be tripling the current budget that the county has to build housing for low-income folks. You know, in addition to that, it's going to help create housing across LA County that's more affordable to everyone by also additionally knocking down barriers. And that's also thanks in part to other really helpful bills that have passed recently, such as SB4, which passed last year, which is the Affordable Housing on Faith Lands Act. So we're seeing that in tandem, there's a lot of really great bills that have come out that like together are going to help yield a lot more housing. And again, this is also this La Casa, the Housing Solutions Agency, is going to work with local cities to update their housing laws and create programs to help people that are at risk of homelessness. And yeah, what's La Casa? As I mentioned before, it's the LA County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency. And it's the mandate is to make housing more affordable for everyone in LA County. So not just low income folks, but everyone. And the idea is to bring leaders and cities together to create more affordable housing, preserve affordable housing that we currently have, and support folks that are at risk of homelessness. So, you know, if you don't take it from me, we have over 100 people that are also supporting this measure. And we have folks from all different sectors. So we have labor, we have faith communities, we have small business, we have elected officials, we have many groups, as you can see here. You might recognize some names as well. You have a musicians union. Clearly, this is something that benefits everyone, and you can see the wide range of groups that are endorsing, that have endorsed, and that continue to endorse as well. And if you're sitting here wondering how you can help and get involved, there's a few things. So the campaign timeline that we have, I should update this because it's now July. So from now until November, we're really focusing on ballot measure education, working on securing more endorsements, providing more outreach, and just continuing to build more coalition with other community partners, individuals, and organizations. This could include things like house parties and gatherings to share the good news, also presenting to groups, as I'm doing right now with you all. And yeah, of course, there's going to be voter engagement. That's going to be starting around September. And that's going to be run through the official campaign. And if you are interested in volunteering, which I would highly encourage and suggest, there's this link. If you could just go to boldnewway.com /sign-up, or you could just go to boldnewway.com and then you can just find it on there as well. But it would involve phone banking, where you call voters, text bank, where you text voters. There might be some canvassing, but it might not be as big of a focus since this is countywide and LA County is huge. And then once it's just a few weeks before Election Day, there's going to be get out the vote efforts as well. And for those that haven't done that before, it's to push already known supporters to vote if they haven't yet already. So it's kind of like a reminder of, hey, we saw that you haven't voted yet. Do you need help knowing where your polling location is? Here's the information that you need. You have from this time to this time. Providing directions. Some folks even, there are, I think, some programs where people can like help drive people to their polling location as well. So I'm not sure if the campaign will be doing that, but they might, but details are still pending for the specifics on that. And then additional ways to help. If you feel inclined to give an individual donation, you can do that at the Bold New Way website, which is our campaign website. And if you are interested in hosting a fundraiser, you can let me know, and I can get you connected with the campaign directly. Also, sharing on social media is super helpful, and yeah, telling your friends and loved ones. And for folks on the call tonight, there's going to be an endorsement form that's going to be shared as well that I would lovingly encourage everyone to consider signing, because I really truly believe that this is going to be helping us all in the county and help create an LA County where we can imagine that homelessness no longer has to happen, and we can all live and feel safe and comfortable and have our needs met, and just be able to continue to create a beloved community. But that is all that I have. I'm so thankful for the time that you all gave me to share. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, discuss, if anyone has any, thoughts or anything like that. But yeah, thank you so much.
Andrea, thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation. And it just provides so much clarity and context for us on the upcoming Measure A. I think it's really awesome to see how it builds on the foundation of Measure H, and also is a great reminder for us to understand that these solutions take a lot of time and resources. Took us a long time to recognize this crisis, unfortunately, and it's taking us some time to treat and prevent it. So thank you again for such an extensive presentation and just the clarity with which you shared it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to invite people to ask questions. I know during your presentation, Wendy Cabile had raised her hand. So Wendy, if you have a question for Andrea, please feel free to share it, and then we'll call on the other raised hands.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm first of all, I appreciate this presentation and I'm glad that you all have her here. Now, I was busy in the chat box, so I kind of missed some of the things, but will we have access? Number one, will we have access to this PowerPoint that we can
Oh
go
yeah,
back
I'd be
on?
happy to share it. Yeah, not a problem.
Number two, now regarding the measure, is it already publicized? Are we able to look at it yet?
Yeah, so the text is available, like the full text if you wanted to read that. And our website is up, it's Bold New Way. We're also on social media as well. So if you search the Bold New Way on Instagram or Twitter, I believe also on Facebook as well. So it's available there as well. But I can also include the full text. It's quite
Okay.
long, but
The
for
reason I'm
policy nerds that want to get into the weeds, I'll be happy to share that.
I appreciate that because for one, I'm in I'm associated with other groups and I would like to be able to share that with them since in that space there are legislative policy analysts and advocates and lobbyists. So I want to be able to share some tangibles. That being said, the reason I'm also asking is because I want to know if it's in the measure, how specific it is about retention. What strategies is in that measure that focuses on retention? And you may have already answered it, but I just want to know if you know. But I'm because this first time I'll probably be taking the time to read a measure, but I'm looking specifically for that verbiage, for that type of explanation or reason moving forward, and also what would be done differently. Now you shared with us verbally. Is that in that measure?
Yeah, so as far as the question of retention, do you mean people that are not falling again into homelessness?
Right. With the strategies, are they listed specifically, or I don't know. I mean, whatever it is that you know.
Yeah. Well, as far as like how it's worded in the full legal text, that I'm not sure as far as like how it's listed in there. But I mean, some strategies include things like emergency rental assistance, which is really key. I mean, there are, there's the program that we have right now, Inside Safe, in the city of Los Angeles, which is wonderful. And then at the same time, it can be difficult if there isn't housing then to move into after that as well. So by increasing units, both by building and also by preserving already existing, that would be helping out a lot as well. But as far as like other specific strategies, there is also like a 3% fund in the total funding allocation that would be towards like innovation and researching things like that as well. As far as like any additional specifics, I'm not actually sure anything additionally, but I can find that out and email that. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Wendy. Mika?
Hello. Thank you so much for your presentation, Ms. Andrea. My question is, can you tell us how specifically, I don't know how specific you can get, will this measure be assisting persons who are currently in UD court? I know you mentioned the mental ill persons, and by me being there every day, that's one thing I noticed. They do not have legal representation, and a lot of these agencies don't take on that clientele because that's a specialization that they need within their companies or their agencies. So can you speak to that, or how these measures will affect those that are already evicted and can't get rehousing because they have a record? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, there's a question about legal representation for people with mental illness. And then the second question is, how will this help people that have already been evicted?
Right, because I guess what I heard was there was a focus on prevention So part of prevention is those who are in UD court, I would assume, that like they're going through eviction or have been served UD paperwork. Sorry, that's my grandson.
That's okay.
Oh.
He's on the spectrum, so sorry about that.
Oh, not a problem.
So so my question is geared towards prevention. So in prevention, are we addressing those that are currently in UDs, or those who have been evicted, maybe be in the process pending sheriff lockout, does
Mhm.
anything in this measure address that population, specifically with the mentally ill, because they don't have legal representation when they're in court?
Yeah, no, this is super, these are really important questions, actually. I haven't been asked this yet, actually, so I really appreciate you asking this. As far as like providing anything like legal representation, to answer the first question, I'd say that this is primarily a funding bill. So if anything, this would be funding any potential services or programs that would be providing things like legal representation. And through like innovation and research that's done by the folks that are running this, I'd imagine that they'd be finding organizations and programs that do that. But as far as like specifically providing representation, this wouldn't be doing that necessarily, but it would be providing like funding and support for groups that would be doing that. And then as far as, and also I can maybe get even more specific answers for that as well, if that's helpful. And then, yeah, it's a really good question about how this would affect people that are like in the process of being evicted. Because again, this isn't so much like a legal bill as it is like funding. So as far as like getting involved in whatever potential lawsuit or issue with the sheriff, I'm not entirely sure actually what that looks like. If it's something that would like get involved in that as it's happening versus providing assistance for folks so it doesn't have to fall into that situation. Let me find out. And I can email back an answer on that. But that's a really good question.
Right, because
Yeah.
part of prevention, and I'll be very quick. As I see it, if we're talking about servicing the mental health community, right, with this bill, with this measure, sorry, part of prevention would be, because sometimes they may get served documents, and because of their mental condition or whatever, they may not be able to understand what they've been served and follow the proper, guidelines and court rules, you know what I mean? And they might just lose by default in some cases, so preventing them from even getting to the point where they're on the street is kind of what I'm looking at. What agencies, I mean, you said it may be some agencies already out there, and being at court every day, there aren't, because I'm there. That's what I do while I'm there. And I'm very busy at that particular court. So just asking if you could just find out if the bill would help that part of the prevention, them losing, because eviction doesn't necessarily mean because you're not paying your rent. It could be the owner wants to, sell the property, or it could be Ellis, there's different reasons why they're getting evicted. It could be nuisance because they have a mental illness. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these people need help there as well. So that's something I'm looking for and would love to help support, Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, for sure. And thank you so much also for bringing the very good point that it's not only just about like inability to pay rent. That's so true. And I can imagine, particularly for someone experiencing mental illness, I would imagine being a lot of discrimination as well, potentially. And so, yeah, it's a very good point. Let me get back to you on that, to find out like how, like, in what way this would be able to potentially prevent something like that from happening. Again, this is mostly like a funding, so it would be, let me get a better answer for you. Let me find out. I want to make sure I have the correct answer for you, because these are like really good and important questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mika, for your question, and Andrea for that thoughtful response. I'd like to say our last question will be Miss Joanne Russell. Andrea, we again want to thank you for your time, but also want to respect your time. So, Miss Joanne.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you for being here with us this evening. And Andrea, I do voter education, and I have a ton of questions that the community would ask. You know, I had put a couple in the chat, you know, like, what's the position for helping people who are still skeptical about putting more money into housing? Do we have a pitch or a platform for showing them that this one would work? Also, it says that we're spending 60% of these dollars on mental health and supportive services and not building housing. So how do we justify that? Because people are going to say, don't we have money for supportive services and things like that? And when we're talking about countywide, you've got a lot of different opinions, because everybody doesn't live in LA to see homeless face to face. So we'll have a lot of adversity. And just for the sake of people on the line, I noticed that, because I'm already signed up for everyone's ends webinars that they're doing on the 13th. They have one about women and housing, and then they have another one on the 19th. So, because we would need to have some more facts to really do the sell, because the other concern I had is, you said the businesses would end up it, and we are growing small businesses. What would be the impact on small businesses if the average person doesn't have to pick it up, you know, with our groceries and stuff, but we're building small businesses in LA County?
Yeah, no, thank you for all of the questions that you asked.
You don't have to answer them all tonight.
I'll try my best.
Food for thought. Yeah, more food for thought, so we can have an effective campaign, you know, because that's how me and Vince met. I'm running around trying to join the voter education team, because people need to know so that they can make a wise decision.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it's very important for people to feel like they understand what it is that they're supporting. So I totally appreciate that. As far as the town hall that you're referring to, we have a town hall tomorrow that's going to be connecting homelessness and like the connection between domestic violence and homelessness, and how there's a huge connection there, particularly for unhoused women. So we're going to have a few folks from different organizations, including Downtown Women's Center, East LA Women's Center, and a few other organizations that'll be in dialogue. I'm actually moderating that. So if you can't get enough of me, you can catch that tomorrow. And then on the 19th, I'll be doing this presentation actually again. It's a bi-weekly training, like a training workshop and education on this bill, or sorry, on this measure. As far as positions on helping people that are skeptical, I'd say, again, like so something that I forgot to mention previously is that this is the first time that there's a countywide initiative to reduce homelessness, which is like insane to think about, but this is actually the first time that that's being proposed. And I'd say that the fact that a huge emphasis is on prevention is a very, very important part of this. I think the fact that there are legally required mandates that have actual real life, real world consequences is another really important thing. So if there are legal goals that haven't been met, there are consequences. Funding would be taken away. So then, you know, our money is being spent wisely and properly to help the most amount of people as possible. So I'd say those are a few really key things that like makes this different. Just the huge emphasis on accountability is really key. And yeah, as far as the percentage of money that's going towards mental health and homeless services, one reason that this is like a higher percentage is because of those really drastically high cuts from the county. And the fact that a lot of services, like a lot of service providers, are actually not being funded enough and not being funded properly as well. I'd say is a huge, huge reason why this percentage is that amount. And again, I just highlighting that $350 million are going to be cut from the county on homeless services is, I think, really big. So I'd say that's probably why that's that amount. I could find a even better answer for you though,
Well, no,
specifically from the
seeing
campaign.
you're connecting facts with your with the theory that we're putting out there, and I think that would be better, especially initially introducing it, because I mean the first thing that, oh, we just spent all this money and y'all blew it and we just had all that. So the more concrete, because yeah, you said how many houses is this going to build? A lot. Okay, cute. So I think, you know, it's a wonderful plan. It's something we really need. But if you give people a little bit more detail now, and then give us, we do literally read the legislation. Yeah, so give it to us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then we can come back and let you know what questions we have, so you know how to prepare it for the people.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Ms. Reba, I see that your hand shot up. I know we've kept Andrea for a long time.
Just really quick.
Okay.
One thing that I noticed is, you know, there was no conversation around the overrepresentation of Black people and how we're going to ensure that those who are overrepresented would actually be addressed. And I would hope that would be truly a highlight.
Yeah, sorry, can you say a little more?
Well, let's take a look at the current data. The current data shows us, it's proven data that says that Black people and Native Americans are overrepresented. The other is that there is the ad hoc committee on Black people experiencing homelessness, and now a steering committee with recommendations that have yet to have been implemented. But the most important thing is that Black people are still overrepresented in the homeless count. It is what we see, it is what we feel, it is what pains us. And not one time was there any conversation or mention of race, particularly Black people, being that we are overrepresented.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. So you're absolutely right in that Black people, Indigenous people, the Latino community as well, I believe is like the fastest growing homeless population in LA County. Yeah, so I touched a bit upon that in the tying in like the racial justice with environmental justice, with housing justice. As far as like having maybe more specificity for specific communities, including Black people, that's something that I could incorporate into this slideshow, if that feels like that would even be more helpful, because I don't know the specific percentage of Black people in LA County, like the percentage of people that are unhoused from that small percentage is like a huge percentage. I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that it's a huge percentage of the homeless population. So you're totally right in that. So yeah, I think it's good food for thought for me to like incorporate that into this slideshow.
Thank you, Andrea, for answering all of our questions, for the amazing presentation. Ms. Reba, thank you so much for bringing up that important point as well. That's something that we see throughout various systems in Los Angeles and the country, the state and the country at large. So again, Andrea, thank you so much. I am going to pass it over to, and thanks for also sharing additional opportunities with which we can engage, I'm sure, as the measure becomes more formalized, we'll also have access to more information and presentations and community engagement. So thanks for kicking it off for us. We really appreciate it. I'm going to pass it to Dr. Orduña, and Dr. Orduña shared some data for us. So I'm going to pass it over to her for that and for the next part of our meeting.
Thank you, Rhea. Thank you again, Andrea, for stepping in. And it sounds like we'll be inviting you back as we get closer and closer and more specificity is added in. So we welcome you, and you're always welcome to sit in or join our meetings. They're every other week. So you're part of our family now. So please join. I'll be very brief, just looking at the time. Wanted to give an update on Days of Dialogue. We just launched an innovative piloted program this week that we're hoping we'll watch it as it grows. It's in partnership with CD10. We're bringing in dialogue and mediation services into bridge housing, starting off with 2 sites working with women. And it's a way of not supplanting case management, but supporting case management and really having the women engage in dialogue around financial empowerment, goals, just life choices and life skills. So often in our social services settings, people are talked to, or, we have these goals and we're like pushing people through. This is an opportunity to pause, to create listening circles, to create healing circles, and a chance for the women to express their own desires. So it's an 8-week dialogue series, which if you participate in our Juneteenth or our, SALT 6, the Black history one, I know that Reba Stevens did, or any of our days of dialogue on tackling homelessness, that normally it's like a 1-day event and it's probably for about 2 to 3 hours. This is the first time we're doing an 8-week series. So we'll be going back every week for 8 weeks. And so we will keep you updated, and hopefully it's something that can expand and again, be of support to, we know our case managers are somewhat burned out in doing this work. And Ray, it goes back to that idea of bridge building. And so we're hoping within that framework, we can expand it, and we'll keep everyone posted. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Orduña. With that, we always like to share opportunities for engagement. And if you have not yet heard about Praxis, we encourage you to please share your email address in the chat and we will get you signed up for it. Praxis is an amazing publication, started and continued by our founder, Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas. And Praxis provides a wealth of information and updates for all things homelessness, all the way from a federal perspective, state perspective, and local perspective. So if you'd like to receive Praxis, I promise that it will become your favorite periodical on all things homelessness. Please feel free to share your email address in the chat, and we will make sure that you are subscribed to Praxis. With that, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. We'd like to thank Andrea again for all the work you're doing on Measure A and to help it become a measure officially, and for your excellent presentation tonight. Thanks everyone for engaging with us. Our next meeting will be Thursday, July 25th. We meet the 2nd and 4th Thursday of the month. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you then. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good
Good night.